Perhaps the most interesting thing about Scomo is his appearance, because you would expect that someone who is as gut-wrenchingly ugly as Scomo would at least have a good personality and intellectual depth to them that can only come from being able to not rely on your aesthetics to coast through life. But no, Scomo is quite remarkable in this exceptionally rare mix of vacuous and hideous. It was like if the horror book from the Page Master didn't have a heart of gold, he was just ugly and a What? You don't remember the Page Master? Fine. Scomo's the complete opposite of film's most rich and complicated character, Elle Woods from Legally Blonde. There, I said it. Scott Morrison is a sick man, a bad man, a man quick to abdicate even the most basic levels of duty if he suspects that duty could hinder opportunities for his own self-advancement, albeit that self-advancement could constitute something as trivial as taking a break from work, usually during a crisis. You can see it so clearly in how he governs. He had 3 jobs with COVID: sort out vaccines, quarantine and nursing homes. What happened with those issues? Lowest vaccination rate in the OECD, all outbreaks come from quarantine leaks, and the majority of Australian deaths from COVID were in nursing homes. But we've already established that he's merely lazy here. Check out Lazy Scott. The scarier fact is Scott Morrison works towards nothing greater in life than his own pleasure. Scott Morrison is a hedonist. Where he gains his pleasure is almost intangible to the average person. He gains it from his own sense of achievement. What are his achievements? His own sense of achievement. It's a paradox, an Ouroboros. There's nothing tying Scott Morrison to the ground. He's a moral relativist. The criteria on which Scott Morrison can categorise actions as right or wrong is as simple as, if Scotty's done it before, then it's okay. Wait, that's not fair. That doesn't take into account his rank hypocrisy. The criteria is more like, will labelling the action wrong provide immediate benefit to Scott? Take for instance his apology to victims and survivors of institutional child abuse. He thought he could win some votes off of the wacko QAnon demographic, so he deliberately inserted a conspiracy theory dog whistle in the apology, condemning ritual sexual abuse.
The crimes of ritual sexual abuse happened in schools, churches, youth groups.
You could view this as Scott Morrison being so tough on pedophiles he wants to condemn even the ones that QAnon just imagined. Yet that's not true, because when it benefits Scott Morrison, he goes out of his way to promote and parade around facilitators of pedophilia. How? In his maiden speech to Parliament, Scott Morrison thanked his spiritual mentor, a man called Brian Houston. Brian Houston is exceptionally wealthy. He's the founder of the tax-exempt Hillsong Church, a church that brings tens of millions of dollars a year in through selling God. I'm not one to shit on religion or Christianity, but it's not a stretch to claim that Hillsong's an almost entirely materially focused enterprise, little interest in actually upholding Christian ideals, instead using them as a marketing tool, advancing the career of those sick enough to go that low. And that's exactly why it's the perfect church for Scotty from marketing. It's a church so removed from its roots that it no longer even resembles a church. It's just a marketing campaign, just like how government is no longer a government, but just a marketing campaign as well. Prime Minister, eh? Yeah, that'll be great on the old resume. Now let's get some ads going about how good I am. What's the cost? Priceless. Mate, there's some things the government can't afford to skimp on. Outdated military antiques and me. They're both the things. Hillsong is the Westfield of churches. It's a mall. Their Star of Bethlehem is the light on top of Centrepoint Tower, or as it's now known, Westfield Tower. And the focus on the superficial, on personal advancement, on PR, that is exactly why Scott Morrison is happy to parade around Hillsong's founder, his spiritual mentor, Brian Houston, no matter how awful the man is. In 1999, Brian Houston was handed leadership of the Sydney Christian Life Centre from his father Frank. Soon after, Brian became aware of multiple allegations of child sexual abuse perpetrated by his dad. Frank would abuse kids as young as 7, and it's not like there was any question in Brian's mind as to whether these events occurred. His dad admitted them to him, and on top of that, he got the allegations independently of that admission. Instead of following both his Christian and legal obligations to go to the police and follow procedures to report these heinous crimes, it appears Brian did everything in his power to conceal them. He headed the church's investigation into his father despite the clear conflict of interest. Looks like ScoMo learnt a thing or two about internal reviews from his mentor, eh? Now you might think this is all new information, but no, In 2015, the Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sexual Abuse censured Brian Houston for his concealment of pedophilia. In 2018, 60 Minutes revealed just how involved Brian was in the cover-up. Brian held confidential meetings, drafted press releases that were only to be released if rumours became too loud, paid off his father, and more. Houston has even publicly and almost proudly admitted his crimes, such as his sense of impunity that comes from being the mentor of the Prime Minister.
Obviously, I felt, terribly sad for the victim, because there's no doubt about it. My father's violated him and, done irreparable damage to his life. And we did oversee and ensure that he was never put in a position to be close to kids to be able to do that again. What we didn't do is report it to the police.
Has Scott Morrison since distanced himself from Brian? Absolutely not. Why would he? Brian is a man after ScoMo's heart, as Brian, just like ScoMo, doesn't make the right decisions. He makes the ones that benefit him the most. After all this damning information was made public, still as Prime Minister, Scott Morrison was more than happy to appear on stage at a Hillsong conference with Brian Houston. Scarier still, Scott Morrison attempted to get Brian Houston into the White House. He was knocked back. I understand why. At the time, it was a very exclusive list to get in. I mean, Kid Rock barely scraped through. But it might have had something to do with the fact that Houston was linked to the pedophilia stuff. Now, after all this time, Brian Houston is finally being charged by the police with concealing child sex offences. And guess what happened only months before he was charged? Houston, we have a problem. Scott Morrison's government gave Houston permission to escape the country, travelling to the US and now Mexico. And as of filming, Scott Morrison has nothing to say. His mentor, who he protected and legitimised, is finally being brought to justice. Surely we need the same to apply to ScoMo. As always, he just wants to escape the consequences of his actions unscathed. This is disgusting and scary behaviour from the most senior politician in the country. I don't think Aussies will stand for it. People need to know that Scott Morrison used your taxpayer dollars to parade around pedophile protectors, and by extension, that makes Scott Morrison a pedophile protector. I needed to let you know this, just in case this slipped by your newsfeed. #PPScomo. Get it trending.
Please share and comment below. Comment.